Stories shape how we see the world. Voice of Witness is an award-winning oral history nonprofit harnessing the transformative power of storytelling. We work with individuals and communities impacted by injustice, helping them document their lived experiences through oral history, telling their own stories in their own words. In an era of reductive sound bites, we need this kind of nuanced grassroots storytelling to create a more just future. Visit voiceofwitness.org/learn to get involved, check out our workshops, and download tools to support your own project. Join us in building a more connected world, one story at a time.
The first 100 days of a new presidential administration have the potential to be the most impactful.
Campaign promises and concepts of plans begin to take shape and become reality.
I'm Sarah.
And I'm Beth.
Together, we host Pantsuit Politics, a podcast where we take a different approach to the news.
Join us for this different approach where we ask questions, resist hot takes, and have fun no matter what the world serves up.
We'll get you through the first 100 days and beyond of the new Trump administration. Stay informed without all the anxiety.
Join us for new episodes every Tuesday and Friday, wherever you get your podcast.
Lemonada. Hello and welcome to Good Things. I'm your host, Gloria Riviera. In 2022, over 2 million students between the ages of 16 and 24 dropped out of school without earning their high school diploma or GED. Behind that number are countless stories. Some students had to choose between staying in school or taking care of a family member. Others were young parents without childcare. And let's not forget how many students struggled academically during COVID. But leaving high school early isn't inevitable. And for those that do, there are innovative schools that can help them get back on track. Today, I'm excited to talk to two leaders in this space. First, Betsy Delgado from the Goodwill Excel Center. These schools are doing something pretty incredible. They are reimagining what school can look like for adults who want to earn their high school diploma. I'm also joined by Allison Gerber, Vice President of the Annie E. Casey Foundation's Center for Economic Opportunity. At the foundation, Allison leads efforts to create pathways to financial stability and economic success for children, youth, and families across the country. Together, they'll share how dropping out is preventable, what tools students on unique journeys need to thrive, and why investing in student success matters for all of us. Betsy and Allison, hello and welcome to Good Things.
Hi, thank you. It's good to be here.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Good morning to you both. Before we dive in, I would love to understand what drew you both to this work, what the why is for both of you. So let's hear from you first, Allison.
So, Gloria, let me start with the positive first. I think, overall, if you look at high school completion in this country, we've made some big gains in the last 15 years. And I think, while we shouldn't lose sight of that, the story I want us to pay attention to is that graduation rates have stalled out around 85%, give or take. And so what that means is that every year we have maybe 500,000 kids across the country who don't graduate. And as of about 2022, that was over 2 million young people between 16 and 24 who don't yet have a high school diploma. And as we look at who these young people are, they tend to attend a subset of low-performing high schools that have graduation rates that are chronically lower than the national average, about twice that. They're often low-income kids, Black, Hispanic, students with disabilities, students who are experiencing homelessness. And about 10 states experience more than half of these non-graduates. And so simply put, why? Is because this offends my sensibilities about what's fair in this country, about what we want for our kids. Like, it cannot be okay that 500,000 kids don't graduate every year, that 15% of our high school graduates don't get the same opportunity as their peers from the get-go, right? And so that's kind of why I'm motivated to do this work.
Betsy, what's your why? Why do you do this work?
Yeah, I'll build off of Allison. I'm a lifetime teacher coach. And when Allison speaks to the 500,000, compound that over a number of years, there's a great concern for the very large population, state by state, who do not have a high school diploma.
And the circumstances of someone who doesn't have a high school diploma are pretty scary, right? 70% more likely to live in poverty, your children to live in poverty. So that like the circumstances of that one event that sometimes Allison, I think described this really well, is kind of out of your control. You're a teenager or you're a young person. But the circumstances and what happens to you because of that dropoutedness is what concerns me. Because I think there's also an assumption about this population that they're not able. They're not capable. When in actuality, they are incredibly capable, crazy smart, just really amazing people. But for the lack of being able to have access to a high quality diploma. And so that's where I come in the work. And like, I have a very strong belief that this population is the solution to many states' workforce problems, right? If they were brought back in to this workforce and able to access it in a meaningful way, the economy, they contribute heavily to their communities. And just like, they're just underestimated. And unfortunately, there's just a narrative around this population of they're not able. Even, you're more likely to be incarcerated. There's a whole bunch of different things that are attached with this that are happening that we know data tells us is happening, but it doesn't qualify them as not being able to be really talented people contributing to society.
Right. And you think about how young people are when they make the decision to drop out for whatever reason it is, and we'll get into that. And I share some of the empathy I'm picking up from you both, because it doesn't need to be that way. And it's almost as if young people don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they're missing. So to be on the receiving end of a helping hand is huge. Allison, what are the reasons students drop out of school? What are the patterns that you see?
Yeah, I think that is a really interesting question, Gloria, when you think about it. So a lot of the reasons that we hear that young people drop out or disconnect from high school come from adults and from school systems, and not from young people themselves. And so some of the things we might hear from schools and educators would be like a young person has too many absences or their grades are failing. But I think about 10 years ago, there was a study that asked young people themselves why they disconnected from school. And they too reported that they were failing too many classes. But behind that, they also said they were bored. They didn't see the relevance of high school in their life. And then they described other things that were going on in their lives, such as needing to earn money to support a family member, maybe caring for a sibling or somebody in their family who was having health problems, needing to take care of their own health and their own mental health. And so when I think about some of those things that young people shared, I think that we have to kind of ask ourselves, like, what's behind the reasons that we hear from schools and educators, and think about what might be the reasons in young people's lives themselves that their lives are making it hard for them to go to school.
So as I hear you answer that question, what sticks out to me is this reason young people cited that they didn't see the relevance of high school. Now, you can take that and make all sorts of assumptions that are negative assumptions about that young person. But when you step back and think, well, how relevant is my social studies class when I need to help get food on the table for my siblings or care for an ailing parent, then it becomes much more understandable. Allison, could you just paint a picture for us of how dropping out of high school impacts a young person's life opportunities, what they're able to accomplish? I imagine job prospects, but there are other things.
So in about 5 years, it's estimated that less than 30% of the jobs that are available at all will be obtainable with a high school diploma or less. So that is a significant decrease, because when you think about where we were in the 80s, about 2/3 of jobs were available to folks who had a high school diploma or less. And I think relatedly and unsurprisingly, 85% of jobs require you to have a high school diploma to earn a wage that would let you support yourself, maybe one day a family. And so when Betsy talks about some of those different downstream effects, it's easy to see if you can't get a job and you can't get a job that pays enough, then you're probably not going to have longer term employment opportunities, earning potential, maybe overall financial stability. You'd be more at risk of homelessness and other factors.
I was just going to add to that. Allison touched on this. We talk about the high school diploma. It's the ticket. It gives you access to college. It gives you access to post-secondary opportunities. And it's been proven that, with the high school diploma plus, you can access some of the jobs that Allison is talking about. Without it, you have no access. So the high school diploma is the ticket. It's the key.
We're going to take a quick break, but we will be right back with more on Good Things.
Interested in the power of first-person storytelling? The Voice of Witness book series documents the oral histories of people directly impacted by and fighting against injustice. Each collection supports historically excluded communities to tell their own stories in their own words. The books feature a diversity of voices, including those of refugees and immigrants, incarcerated people, communities displaced from public housing, farm workers, indigenous peoples, and more. These powerful stories highlight crucial issues and expose the impacts of harmful narratives and policies, laying the groundwork to build solidarity and movements for change. Voice of Witness books are read and used by thousands of educators, organizations, and advocates across the country each year. Visit voiceofwitness.org/read to learn more, access free resources, and get involved.
This message is brought to you by Cologuard, a non-invasive colon cancer screening test. Did you know that colon cancer is considered the most preventable yet least prevented cancer? When caught at early stages, colon cancer is survivable in 90% of people, so screening and early detection are key to reducing overall colon cancer deaths. That's why the American Cancer Society recommends that if you are at average risk, you begin screening for colon cancer at age 45. And a convenient way to do that is with the Cologuard test. The Cologuard test is delivered to your door and allows you to feel more in control of your colon cancer screening and do it on your own schedule, with none of the prep that is required of a colonoscopy. Plus, the Cologuard test is affordable. Most insured patients pay $0, and if a follow-up colonoscopy is needed, this is covered by most insurance plans. So, if you're 45 or older and at average risk, ask your healthcare provider about screening for colon cancer with the Cologuard test. You can also request a Cologuard prescription today at Cologuard.com/podcast. The Cologuard test is intended to screen adults 45 and older at average risk for colorectal cancer. Do not use a Cologuard test if you have had adenomas, have inflammatory bowel disease, and certain hereditary syndromes, or a personal or family history of colorectal cancer. The Cologuard test is not a replacement for colonoscopy in high-risk patients. Cologuard test performance in adults ages 45 to 49 is estimated based on a large clinical study of patients 50 and older. False positives and false negatives can occur. Cologuard is available by prescription only.
Let's shift to talk about the Goodwill Excel Centers that Betsy has been so involved in for so long. These are centers that target whom, if you can tell us. And I really love that the approach reimagines what we think of when we think of graduating from high school, right? It really takes the traditional definition and turns it on its head to serve the people that are in desperate need of that ticket, as you mentioned. So what makes the approach different from traditional high school?
Yeah, so 90% of our students are between 18 and 35. So it's that sweet spot that Allison's talking about, that 18 to 24. And then we go beyond to a little bit older. And so we were very intentional in building this model to think about the population that was in our space and think differently about school. And we had adults, but adults who needed what was a traditionally teenage high school diploma. And so how do you morph those two things together so that academic rigor exists, but also supportive adults? So within our model, we have childcare free on site at every location. You can't have an Excel Center without free childcare. We think about and offer free transportation. So if that's in an urban setting, it's often bus passes and things like that. But then if we're in a more rural setting, it might be gas cards or ride sharing or something like that. And then we really do embrace the quality of the diploma has to be high. It's in person. It can't be credit recovery. We have to have really highly qualified teachers. We jokingly talk about badasses with a heart because it's like, look, They have to be people who are tough and set a high expectation, because we're not doing anybody a favor if we just move them through, right? They're going to be in the same circumstances and have a diploma that they can't use, right? So that rigor, the curriculum has to be strong and mapped to this local state's standards. So every diploma, every person that walks across the stage is getting a diploma that is equal to the high school diploma in the traditional age school next door or in the neighborhood. And then finally, we added in this component where we knew that the high school diplomas we were talking about is the key, but these were adults and they needed more. So on top of that, while they're with us, they actually earn an industry recognized certification or college credits. And most of the time now we've moved into both. So when that adult walks across the stage, they not only have a very high quality high school diploma, they also have something else that makes them highly employable. So these are all kind of the facts of the case, but then also the school had to feel different, right? Another reason that kids leave is because they get bullied or they're lost. Nobody pays attention. Nobody knew if I was there or wasn't there, right? So the schools, I think we really do train or look for when we hire staff, because it's a hard thing to train, the empathy that you're describing, the belief in humanity and people, that people can pass algebra even if they're 25 years old.
Betsy, you've talked about how Excel has many students who are parents as well. And I love the childcare element. That just checks a huge box for me because I care passionately about early education and childhood. So that is fantastic. But how do you see your wraparound services helping these students who are parents manage parenting and very likely balancing a job on top of it? We've talked about bus passes, so transportation. Is it really a logistical approach to what this student needs to be able to get the degree they're going for?
Absolutely. The purpose of the life coach and the resources that the life coach has to wrap around the student and their family, right? These are complicated, multidimensional people. And so to just address education or talk with education about them doesn't really make sense, because it's all the life circumstances as an adult that are going to keep you from being able to be successful and complete. And that's the goal. There's no problem we won't help you solve. You know what I mean? So if you come to us and you say, hey, this is something that's an obstacle for me, we're going to think as creatively as we can. So my best story about this is one of our directors had a young mom. She was in a housing complex. It was fairly dangerous and she felt really uncomfortable. And so we helped her find another place. And everything was going well. And then she came in just sobbing one day and she said, I'm not going to get my deposit back. I have to have my deposit or I can't move into this safer place for my child and I. My 2-year-old spilled like grape juice on the carpet. And so they're going to keep my deposit. So the director and a coach hired a vacuum, the steam cleaner.
Yep.
Went over to her house, helped her clean out that stain. It was $100. And whatever her deposit was, I'm sure was a lot more than that. She got it back and she was able to move on. I think there's a bit of a mythology that we, particularly as Americans, live around, which is we raise ourselves up by our bootstraps. We do it alone, right? Our success is ours. And I think that is really a detriment to the folks, the students that we're talking about, because that's not true. I sit in this seat because thousands of people help me sit here, right? All of us. And so I think it's helping them understand that this network is here for you. We're going to help you. We're going to stand alongside you. And in the end, you are able to then do those problems, solve those things yourself. But if you come back to us, we're going to help you, right? We're going to continue to help you.
Yeah, Betsy, I am completely feeling what you're saying, because I think in addition to this idea that we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, there's this attitude that everything's fine. My 16-year-old son and I joke that we're going to get T-shirts made that say, everything's fine here. When in fact, sometimes it's not fine. And when you're exhausted and a parent and a student and trying to find a way forward, the idea of a carpet steamer could be the last thing that you could possibly, hustle yourself to do. And in fact, just last week, I had to hire a carpet steamer for not grape juice, but pumpkin stains on a white carpet. So I love that story.
It's awesome.
Let's go back for a moment because you quickly mentioned the term life coach, and I don't think we've said that yet on this podcast, but it's a terrific term and speaks directly to this idea that we cannot do everything on our own. So tell me about the life coaches. Why are they there, and what are they doing day to day?
Yeah. The job is really interesting, right? Because you got people from all walks of life doing the job. So some might be teachers that decide to be a life coach. Some have a social work background. Some have mental health background. And so the life coach component is this very interesting kind of mix of academic and really thinking about the social side of life. And so we also knew that it had to be a consistent person throughout their time with us, kind of throughout their career at the Excel Center. So the motto really has you get your life coach when you come. They're the person that's on your side all the time. They're the person that's advocating for you with your teachers. They're working with you constantly to think about how you can move forward in life in a way that many of the students that we have never had someone like that in their life.
Okay, sit tight, everyone. We're going to take one more quick break, and we'll be right back with more Good Things.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. Think about your mentors and idols, the people who inspire you the most. While it may look like they have all the answers, they don't. But they do know when to ask questions and seek the support they need. In a world that glorifies hyper-independence, it's easy to forget that we're all better with a support system behind us. Therapy is a great way to invest in yourself and find a consistent source of support in your life, so you can break free from the outdated belief that seeking help is a sign of weakness. BetterHelp has experienced therapists ready to help you with challenges ranging from anxiety and depression to relationships and stress. It's convenient, too. You can join a session with a click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. And you deserve that. You can even send your therapist a message anytime something comes up. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com.
Want a sneak preview of hot new audiobooks? Then check out Your Next Listen, a new podcast from Lemonada Media and Simon & Schuster Audio. We've got everything: the hottest new thrillers, best-selling celebrity memoirs, and swoony romances. And these aren't tiny clips either. They're entire chapters you can listen to. Your Next Listen is out November 11th, wherever you get your podcasts.
I'm curious about how you've seen students' lives really change after attending the center, because I'm assuming that you continue a relationship with at least some once they're graduated, right? Once they've moved on. Does anything come to mind?
Yeah, I can give you kind of anecdotal, and then I'd love to talk a little bit about our research. So Katie dropped out of school when she was 12 years old because she got pregnant. She had two parents who both were involved with alcohol and drugs. And so she really was on her own at 12 years old and pregnant. And when I talked to her, I think about how well she navigated considering those circumstances. She ended up getting her GED. She was working at McDonald's. She had another baby and she was surviving, and the kids were surviving, but that was about it. And so when she would try to go for a different job, she couldn't go beyond that entry-level job and she couldn't make more money. So she was at a class with one of her kids and a parent was talking about the Excel Center. And so she enrolled. And this was in 2014. So we were just getting started, right? And what I love is the more time you give our students, the more story there is to tell, right? And so now here we are 11 years later. She got her farm tech when she was with us. So she graduated with her farm tech and her high school diploma, and her little boys were little. They were little boys. And she got a job as a farm tech at Walgreens. And was making way more money than she was making. And then she moved into a hospital system as a pharmacy tech. She did so well there that they promoted her then to being in charge of training all of their farm techs. So we're following her. She's adding to her story for us. And she spoke on our behalf a lot. And so finally we said, well, Katie, will you start teaching for us? And she said, yeah, I'd love to teach for you guys. So she started teaching at night and doing her job during the day, to the point where other school districts around us, traditional school districts, were like, and she has like a 95% grad rate for these students. So they started asking her to teach. So she ultimately ended up opening her own business, teaching medical assisting, farm tech, and she has contracts with different school districts and goes and teaches for them as well as still teaching for us, and has started building out this business. And so like, that's the gift that keeps on giving. That's what that high school diploma unlocks and accesses in a very different way for our adults. They like take it and they run. What the data says is that our graduates after 5 years are making 39% more than their peers. Our graduates are more likely to go to school, stay in school, post-secondary. They're more likely to work in higher paying jobs and stay and get promoted in those jobs. So this gift keeps on giving. And so if you, again, we talked about that word compound. Think about over time, as you're adding to your education, you have access to all these things, what that does not only for you, but for your children.
Right. And it addresses directly issues such as intergenerational poverty, right? In it, after addressing issues like housing and food security. Shifting back to you, Allison, I'd love to just zoom out a little bit, because we know dropoutedness, which is a term you used, Betsy, which I love, is preventable. It is preventable if students have the right support. So what would it look like to help students on a systematic level before they drop out? I mean, is that the next challenge for you, or a simultaneous challenge as you support schools such as the Excel Center?
Yeah, great question, Gloria. So I think we think about it at the Casey Foundation in terms of both thinking about the young people who might drop out and what we would put in place to support them, but also like supporting the work that Betsy and the folks at the Goodwill Excel Centers do for the young people who have already dropped out and who need our support, and that we should do both of these things. And so let me talk about some of the things that I think look the same regardless. We need to think about different strategies for accelerating reading and math scores for folks who have fallen behind, right? And there's a lot of good evidence out there about high dosage tutoring and thinking about ways that the curriculum can incorporate work-based learning or experiential learning that really makes these lessons stick. I think those things apply to both older folks and younger folks. You know, you heard Betsy talk about their life coaches and the role of the life coaches. I would relate that back to, you know, we talked about the study where young people told us why they disconnected. And almost 1/5 of them said, because nobody cares if I go to school. And so something I think we can do for kids who are currently in school, and that you're hearing that what Betsy is doing for folks who are returning to school, is making sure there is a person who cares. You know, I think maybe the other thing I'd point out was something that Betsy raised, is this role of supportive services. So, you know, for older folks, the role of childcare is probably more prominent than we think about for younger folks. But there's just lots of supportive services that can make the difference. You know, access to healthcare, having mental health supports. Transportation is a challenge for everyone, right? And then the last thing that I'd highlight that I think is relevant to both, and I'm going to say it like it's really easy, but it's really hard. Thinking more flexibly about the school day and the arrangement of a curriculum and how it's delivered. We see this in some of the youth apprenticeship work that we support for high school students, how to arrange the workday. So kids might go to school in the morning and they could work in the afternoon. We see these things really working, and I want to acknowledge it is really hard because schools then have to think differently about designing their day for a subset of young people.
Right. What comes to mind when I hear you explain that approach to rethinking the day is that traditionally high school can be thought of as constantly asking something of the student, whereas what's becoming clear for me is that at a place like Excel, that's not the mindset. The mindset is not, I'm going to enter into a place that's going to constantly ask me to do this, do that, but instead will hold me, really, whether it be, you know, steaming my carpet or watching my child. As we wrap up, I do have one last question for both of you. So I am a glass half full kind of gal. And I'd really love to hear from each of you about something really good that you're seeing right now. And Allison, I'll toss it to you first.
I just really want to lift up what Betsy is saying about there being alternative high schools like the Goodwill Excel Centers that do work, that we have a sense of the set of things that can be used to support somebody who has been disconnected from school from some period of time and help them make that shift in their lives. And that the Goodwill education folks have done it in different states and in different community contexts with different groups of students. And I don't mean to say that it's a light lift. I know Betsy and her team work very, very hard to stand up schools, to keep them operating, to keep them funded. But it's working and people are getting a second chance. And I think that's tremendous.
Yeah, I do too. Betsy?
Thank you both. I'm going to build on that and say the light that I see is we do have this evidence. Less than 1% of nonprofits have causal evidence that their intervention works. And we have that. So I think we're an easy bet, right? We've got the evidence. So invest in us, invest in these solutions that we know work. And by no means am I against innovation. I think we were innovative, right? We tried something new. We were given space to try something new. So I think it takes both, right? Let's invest in things that are promising, but let's also invest in things that we know are going to work state by state, community by community, in different contexts, rural and urban. So that's the light I would give you, is that we do know some of these things work and let's invest in them.
Well, I will take that light, and I want to say a real deep sense of gratitude is what I'm feeling right now for the work that you both do. So thank you, and keep going. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This episode was made possible with support from the Annie E. Casey Foundation. Learn more at aecf.org. Views expressed in this episode are solely those of the participants. Thanks for listening to Good Things. I'm your host, Gloria Riviera. This series is produced by Hannah Boomershine, Lisa Fu, and Aria Bracci. Our supervising producer is Muna Danish. Mixing and sound design by Noah Smith. Jackie Danziger is our VP of Partnerships and Production. Production support from Maggie Kraushaw. Executive producers are Stephanie Whittles-Wax and Jessica Cordova-Kramer. Help others find our show by leaving us a rating and writing a review. Follow Good Things wherever you get your podcasts and listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next week. Hi, everyone. Gloria Riviera here, and we are back for another season of No One is Coming to Save Us, a podcast about America's childcare crisis. This season, we're delving deep into 5 critical issues facing our country through the lens of childcare: poverty, mental health, housing, climate change, and the public school system. By exploring these connections, we aim to highlight that childcare is not an isolated issue, but one that influences all facets of American life. Season 4 of No One is Coming to Save Us is out now wherever you get your podcasts.
Want more from your favorite Lemonada Media podcasts while supporting the shows that help make life suck less? Subscribe to Lemonada Premium today. As a subscriber, you'll unlock exclusive bonus content like never-before-heard interviews, behind-the-scenes moments, bonus episodes, and so much more. It's easy to sign up no matter what podcast app you use. On Apple, you can just click the Lemonada logo in the Apple Podcast app and hit subscribe. For all other podcast apps, head to lemonada.supportingcast.fm to subscribe. That's lemonada.supportingcast.fm.